I think getting a PhD in your spouse is a very important job. What she needs changes, and what she wants changes, and what she's going to potentially enjoy and not enjoy very much changes. And I mean, I'll never forget the moment when I realized the best gift I could give my wife was time away from me. Solitude without anybody, including myself, is actually one of the best gifts for your soul in this stage of life.
Welcome to the Courageous Men Podcast, where we help Christian men follow God faithfully, love their families well, and build a legacy that lasts. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
Brook, welcome to the Courageous Men Podcast. You are a perfect guest. The more I've gotten to know about you, the more I'm like, okay, this guy, we got to have him on. And then once you agreed, I'm so thankful because I know so many men listening are going to benefit. Thank you.
Wow. No, thank you. I've never been called the perfect guest. I would like this to be noted. I'm going to write this down for my wife today. Sweetheart, I've been called the perfect guest, and you need to treat me as such.
Well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to,
yeah.
So, get us started maybe with just maybe a brief statement of why intentional fatherhood matters, say today more than ever.
Ooh. I think intentional fatherhood matters more than ever because we have less models, less examples, less framework than we've ever had going into our own stories. I think that there's so many well-intended men, and I want to say that because I think there's so many men in the world right now that are not strong-willed, they're weak-willed, and they just need models. Their heart's good. They want to do the right thing. They just don't really always know how. I think the scriptures, Jesus, life mentors, all the above can help us in that journey. But I think many of us, more than ever, because of some of the dynamics of the moment that we're living in, we actually, in so many ways, don't have functional models from our lived experience. Now, some of us do. Some of us had great dads or great grandfathers or uncles or people that maybe gave us like some framework. But the good majority don't. And so I have found that it's more important than ever because I think men are just looking for other men who are honest about their failures, very vulnerable, very transparent, which means feels probably exposing for that the one sharing, vulnerable, transparent, and honest about the journey, but can still give them hope at the same time to say, no, like, yes, it's hard. Yes, you might have fallen. But the scriptures are really clear. A righteous man might fall 7 times, and that idea of like over and over and over, but he rises again. And so what do the models look like? So that's kind of a long-winded way, but I would say it's more important for us to have healthy models and healthy examples of what men look like so we can live into it.
You spoke about, say, less framework. What's some framework maybe that was modeled for you, growing up, or maybe wasn't modeled until you were later? What did that look like?
Well, that might be a part 2 of the podcast as far as length of
maybe
time.
Give us like one thing.
Yeah. Well, I think it's tricky. We all grow up in different environments, but those environments were shaped by generations before. And so I think it's really tricky to even respond to that because now did I have good models and did my parents do a lot of things right? Absolutely. But it would also be untrue to say that they did everything right and that I took all their examples and have refitted them to my life and said that it was great. My story starts generations ago with a family that's, brokenness on both sides of my mom and my dad's side. And so my parents get together, human flawed, just like all of us in many ways, and their brokenness, some healed and some didn't. And I think, your question of, hey, what are some things that you maybe did have modeled? I think I had things like generosity modeled. I had things like be a thoughtful person, take care of yourself, take care of others. I would say generalized Christian principles. But my parents were truly going through so much active pain and dealing with past trauma that they had a really hard go at being present at a lot of the things that I needed in the moment, and my siblings as well. And so it's always tricky for me to answer. And I don't know if it's because my mind has unintentionally or intentionally blocked it out for protection, or it's that, man, it just wasn't, the same experience as others. And I think it's really important for men and actually whoever listens to this podcast to note that we have a real importance of honoring our parents, even if they have wronged us. It doesn't mean you accept the pain they've given. It doesn't mean that you validate that what they did to you that was wrong wasn't wrong. I don't mean that, but I do think there's a way that we can honor them even in their own depravity because we have our own. So that's not the exact direction, but I would say that's how I would respond to that one.
I appreciate the response, and I would love for us to talk about that even more. I'm sure there's plenty of listeners that can relate to that. But I maybe on a lighter note too. What's one thing that's just brought you joy in your home this week?
My son got a job in 5 minutes. That brought me joy this week. As a dad, so I have 4 kids. I've been married to Elizabeth for almost 19 years, my wife. And then we have 4 kids, 16 down to the age of 7. And he has his license. And, as a dad, you're always trying to teach your kids, especially I think if you have sons, the goal is like, son, be a hard worker, be efficient, be thoughtful, character, integrity, these things that matter. They deeply do. And we've been telling him, we're like, dude, you got your license. And we gave him 1 month from the time he got his license to get a job, primarily because it's harder to get a job when you don't have a license and you're not 16. So we said, hey, we'll give you 30 days. At the end of those 30 days, you can't use the car. So get a job or don't, figure it out, just try to give him some space. And it was probably 10 days in. I was like, bro, just want to remind you, you got 20 days, 20 days left. And he was getting on me because he's like, dude, I don't know why you're getting on me so much. I'm trying as much as I can. I was like, you've only turned in 1 job application. What are you talking about? You have to turn in 15 to see if you can get a job, just trying to explain it to him. And so upon coaching him, I said, whenever you meet these people, shake their hand, eye contact, let them know you're a hard worker. These are key phrases that people in my generation will go, yes, I like this kid. There's something different. And so he goes into this it's a cool taco shop in town, and he meets the guy. He meets the manager, shakes his hand, says, I'm here. I'm a hard worker. Would love the opportunity to work here, whatever it is. And the guy says, can you sit down and interview right now? And he said, sure. And then 10 minutes later, the guy's like, can you start tomorrow? And he's like, sure. And so he comes back after we have this tension point of me being like, son, you've got to be more responsible and diligent with this. Time's going to be up. And he's like, hey, Dad, I got a job. So that brought me a lot of joy this week. It was like, you put all the time and the effort and it happened.
I hope he doesn't think every interview will go that smooth or quick,
He's also, this is going to make you it made me so angry. He is making $27 an hour with tips.
Wow.
So you obviously have minimum wage is so much higher than when we were around, right? But the tip situation there is bonkers, and they share tips just evenly. And he's like, yeah, you can expect anywhere from 25 to 27 bucks an hour. And I was like, son, this is so not normal. So just appreciate every second of it and don't expect it.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Let's get into some just fatherhood things. So maybe some tactical things. I'd love to just learn from you personally. I want the guys listening to learn and maybe think through or help us think through what's one small shift a dad can make tonight that will say change the tone of his home.
Ooh. There's a lot. I mean, it's really like a buffet of choices.
Yeah, well, maybe they feel like they're a failure. They just don't even know where to start to kind of lead there, in their home. Yep. And so maybe we start with something that's something they can definitely do tonight.
Yeah, I think something that is the most powerful, the most healing, and the most rapidly healing is repair, apologizing, and taking responsibility for the man that you haven't been. I think that there's nothing more noble. Your wife would tell you this, men, and so I'll tell you on her behalf. It's harder for you to hear her if there's already been other words said of frustration and irritation in this space. But there's nothing more noble than admitting that you're wrong, admitting that you failed, and admitting that you didn't have what it took to do what you needed to do in that moment. And there's nothing more healing to your relationship to your wife, and there's nothing more healing to your relationship with your kids. So if you want to start somewhere, I would start with having a moment, sit on the porch, go on a walk, and just acknowledge without excuse the things that you know that you haven't been. And for younger kids, it might look like, hey, Daddy was angry. Will you please forgive me? It might be simple. But for your older kids or even for your wife, I think it's a little bit more specific. I think you get into it and you say, listen, my anger has been controlling my life, and it's it's attacked you in times in certain ways, and it's come out in me saying rude things or being too intense or too verbal or maybe even too physical. And I just wanted to tell you that that's not okay. And I don't think it's okay. You don't deserve that. And I want to ask your forgiveness. I think that is the most powerfully healing and rapid thing that begins to sow in beauty into the ecosystem of the home. And as a dad, if you do that, because we know biblically, whether you understand it, agree with it, or even like it, you have this mantle of authority and responsibility given to you by God, woven into who you are as a man over your home. Now, that doesn't mean that your wife has nothing to say or she doesn't have equal stuff to offer. It just means that there's something in the heavenlies that happens when a man takes that responsibility on and then goes, I'm going to live it out. And it's amazing what happens with your wife and your kids. So I'd say start there.
Love that. Man, that's so good. If we can take that step, it does something on both sides as well, right? For for the man, just to own that like that, just outwardly. And I love that you mentioned too, to the kids as well.
Well, I just want to say, it's interesting because we can only get forgiveness in the sense of true forgiveness from Jesus, right? Confess your sins to one another that you may be healed. When I confess to Jesus, I get forgiveness, but when I confess to others, I get healing. When you confess to your wife and you confess to your kids, there's healing that happens in your soul that you're not even aware of. So I think that's an important reminder that Jesus doesn't say just confess to him alone. It's both end for healing. So,
wow. Have you seen maybe just that working in your own house and then maybe with your children? Maybe is there a shift change or with your relationships with your kids or anything where you've seen, hey, you've owned something and I don't know, it just changes the relationship in a positive way?
Have I seen that happen?
Yeah.
Is that what
yeah.
you're saying?
Just any kind of
example. I mean, I can't even tell you how, I have, again, it's a countless amount of examples of, so the truth is I'm probably yourself or others listening that when I tell my kids to do something 3 times, I'm listen, I'm going to be the gracious, very kind. I've said it nice. I have. But then you ignore the 5th, 6th time, now the heat's going on. And unfortunately, we're not going to just slowly turn it up. It's going from it's calm to now we're in a situation here. Now, that's not good. That's my own brokenness, my own examples, poor models becoming my own. And I would just highlight that those moments, your kids feel them, right? And I want to be super transparent. I'm in this now actively. This isn't something hey guys, I solved this and now I'm telling you from a place of perfection and I'm doing a great job with this. This is never an issue. This will be an issue most likely tonight. I could imagine it being an issue that I will have to work through this evening. Bedtime's coming. It's coming for all of us. Just a reminder to all you dads listening. It's coming. For some it's easy. Be thankful. For some it's not, and bless you. But I think that the point is, as an example, those moments when I have been too harsh, too frustrated, too short, those tender moments when, for my youngest 2 are girls, Birdie and Sloan, they're 9 and 7. They share a room, and when I'm praying with them and talking with them and just recounting the day with them, there's almost if I haven't apologized, there's almost a coldness. There's almost a, tension. But the moment I'm just hey, I'm so sorry. That was the wrong thing. I lost my temper or I was short with you. Kids are so quick to forgive. They want to forgive you so badly. It's actually uncomfortable to me how quickly my kids will forgive me for stuff. I'm are you sure you shouldn't be embittered about this? It seems like a pretty big one, right? At the same time, man, I think that kids are so ready to forgive and it just immediately tends to heal the relationship. So, there's countless others, but that's just the one that comes to mind right now.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I love our children's hearts as well. When it's you apologize, it does feel that way. No, that was too quick. You shouldn't forgive that fast.
Yeah.
No, it's so amazing how much we can learn from them
yes,
as
sir.
well, right? What about Brooke? Just in 4 kids, and I think married. What'd you say, 19 years? And life gets chaotic often, right? I feel when you feel that happening, what's your first move to get maybe your heart back in the right place, and maybe your family? What are some things? Yeah, life is just crazy. Maybe school starting back, or you're traveling, or you're doing this, and the church, and all these things happening. Maybe what prompts you noticing, hey, it's getting too crazy, or I need to like pull everybody back in as a family, or just get all of our hearts back on track here?
Sure. Oh, yeah, Whitney, that's a great question. I would say a few things. I don't notice, and this is again, every person, every guy, every family is going to have their own dynamic. I don't notice until things start to come unwound. So the first alarm bell is my wife. It's her highlighting like, hey, things are like going too quick. And we haven't had moments to connect as a family, as a couple. Like, this is getting a little out of whack. Now, the wisest thing to do is to listen to her in that moment. I usually don't. I'm usually like, well, I mean, you're kind of being maybe just a little sensitive because she's on the early side of things. So it's easy for me to, and this isn't a good thing, to almost like shove it under the rug a little bit. Like, it's not that big of a thing. I think you're maybe being an alarmist. We're not there yet because I don't feel it, it hasn't caught up to me yet. But lo and behold, a week or two goes by and we're exactly right. Like she's been spot on. Things are becoming unwound. So I think for her, she's kind of like the first one to kind of raise the flag and be like, hey, we need to be aware of this. And it usually prompts me because when I'm going fast, like maybe a lot of guys, when you're moving through the world quickly and there's a lot on your plate as a father, as a husband, work-wise, it's easy to become disconnected from the reality of yourself. And I think that a lot of the times for me, she brings the reality back of like, hey, just as a reminder, you're not actually where you think you are mentally. And so she's usually the first one. What ends up happening is it's usually slowing down. If I'm being honest, it probably plays out in some sort of argument between my wife and I of some other thing that we just haven't been dealing with because I've been too busy to deal with it. And we usually have a tension point, which then brings out more of how she and the kids have been experiencing me in my busyness. And that's usually then the moment. I'm not saying any of this is healthy, by the way. I'm just saying this is our dynamic. That moment prompts me to say like, okay, I got to listen. This crew is giving me active feedback that I'm not at a space that is optimal, right? And I don't think it's as chaotic as I'm making it sound in some ways, but I think it's just like there's an undoing. So then for me, I think the main things I do is there's a few things, a verse that just in Luke that just always, every time I read it, it doesn't matter how many times I read it, it doesn't matter when I do, it always just hits this little spot in my heart and I just go, yes, I love it. And it's in Luke and it's just about Jesus. And it just says he often withdrew to the lonely places and prayed. And I mean, every time I even say it, I'm like, yes, I love that. And that idea that Jesus had this like natural rhythm and order of things that he always went back to. What I love about it too, when you look at his rhythm, if you read the scriptures through and through, Jesus, his routine wasn't rigid, but it was rooted. And that was the part for me that I just love to understand, like how much of us are like, no, we have to have our rigid routine. It's got to be from this time to this time or it doesn't count. And Jesus kind of blows that out of the water. Like he's like, I wasn't rigid about it. Some mornings are going to be super easy to just connect with me and beauty and go on long walks and just pray and fast and all that stuff. Other mornings, it's going to be really chaotic and it's not going to be, the easiest or the best or your favorite morning. You're not going to necessarily have that quiet, silent, solitude time. At the very same time, I would say it's the rootedness of it. I always go back to it. So for me, I usually then go, okay, I'm waking up extra early. I need to start processing with Jesus. I need to come back to center. That always helps me. I'd say that's a morning thing. An evening thing would be then I immediately I go in seasons of just doing long prayer walks at night after the kids are asleep, not in bed, because those are two different times. In bed and asleep are different. And I would say when they're asleep and the house is quiet, I'll slip out. And that's my time to just process everything with God out loud. My disappointments, my frustrations, my dreams, my hopes. Those are two active things. And then I kind of just begin to do an inventory, like an examine. What am I eating? How am I sleeping? Am I drinking too much? Am I eating too much? Am I avoiding too much? Am I allowing certain forms of entertainment that are just like not necessarily overtly sinful, but just definitely not helpful? Where we put our mind is the most important thing that we have responsibility over. And I think as men especially, when your mind is just focused on the endless scroll on YouTube, which is highly entertaining, I so agree. But when you get trapped into those cycles, like we have to have moments to just know like, no, I gotta either change my rhythm, change my routine. I need to snap out of that. And then practically, what are your to-dos? So those are like the things I go to. I usually up exercise in that moment because I'm realizing usually if I've gotten to that place, we're holistic. Our bodies and our minds and our hearts and our spirits, they're so interconnected. So I try to holistically look at my life and go, what haven't I been doing? And the reason this is so like, I'm able to say this so freely right now is because I'm literally in the last several weeks in a place of that exact dynamic where it's like things have been out of whack. Things have been full, busy. Every time they do, I'm always like, no, we'll be fine. I won't fall back into the same, trap of over busyness, overwork. And yet we land there. And so what do? We apologize, we get up and we do it again. So those are some of the things I do to stay focused.
Love that. Love the practical things too. Even you modeling really after Jesus, right? And just spending time with him, with the Lord, and the early mornings or late nights. And that's incredible. But I love the thought too, where Jesus's routine, is rigid, or you said isn't, I say so rigid, but it is rooted.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to think through that and just even pray about that for my own life.
Yes.
And, even as we think about those routines and rhythms, and I think you talked about Elizabeth speaking into you, at times, and which I just couldn't agree more. I don't know where I would be without my bride.
Yes.
That's for sure, because just the Lord just speaks through her. And so what's maybe a weekly rhythm that you and Elizabeth, say protect at all costs, around say your marriage?
Oh man, that's such a good one. It's how much I'm just trying to figure how much.
You don't have to have had mastered it, I'll say, but something. Even
no. I can tell you easily we haven't mastered it, but it's like, how deep do we go? Well, I think there are a few things. So I would say we can live in we have our ideal life and we have our actual life. Our ideal life is dates once a week, getting away every quarter, getting away for a week or two every year. Those are our ideals. We don't go on a date every week, although we want to. We do not get away every quarter, although we try. And we usually can get away for a couple of nights, if not a week every year. So I'm just being completely honest. I think have the goal. If you can live into it, amazing. I also think that sometimes because of life circumstances, it's really hard to live into those ideals. I think the main thing at bare minimum we try to do is we try to connect every day for at least 15 minutes. Now, I know that you're like 15 minutes, that's it. When you are in the throes of life, it is amazing how hard just 15 minutes of uninterrupted conversation, of checking in can be. You know very well. I mean, 5 kids at home, Whitney, So it's amazing how if you do not make time for that, it honestly, like at least for us anyway, it just doesn't naturally happen. Like we have to go, kids, you're cleaning up dinner, or hey, the kids are in bed. Let's connect. Let's talk really quick. What's happening with your day? How are you? What's going on? So I'd say that's a big one. I would say every week we have Sabbath. And so, I mean, again, I don't think you need a TMI, but I also think like Sabbath is to rejoice in every part of your life, in your marriage, especially I would say sexually with your wife, man, like having a date and a rhythm to like, we're going to connect in these ways. I think for men, it's super helpful. I think for women, it's super helpful. But I would say those are like a couple things, like connecting emotionally each day and longer throughout the week, and having, weekly rhythms of intimacy talked about, planned in, knowing it's coming, making space for it. I think those are types of things. And again, I mean, the common things are date night. I'm like, yeah, that's great. But honestly, like intimacy, connecting intimately with your spouse in all of these different ways are so important. And so I would say, to answer your question or to respond, what do we protect? We protect those things, those 15 minutes a day, those weekly connection points, because we find that brings us in our marriage the most life. And does that mean it's a date? Sometimes. Does that mean sometimes it's, a week away? Sometimes. But I think that keeps us grounded, keeps us centered, keeps us connected.
I appreciate your transparency. That just helps, I think, men so much, right? For you to just say what they're thinking, right?
Oh yeah, I know what they're wondering. They're like, we just want to have a rhythm, and we would like to know when this is coming. And
yeah, that's right.
Totally.
No, I'm grateful. Even like you talking about, hey, 15 minutes, right? And it's easy to, like you said, to think, well, just 15 minutes. No, really, if you can at least get that in sometimes, you're doing great. For
Yes.
Chelsea and I, it's been early mornings
Ooh.
and this has been probably for 7 or 8 years now, where we both get up, let's say between 5:30, and that time of just like coffee, reading the word, sometimes together, or at least maybe in the same, sitting on the same couch type of thing.
Sure.
And then there's time of just conversation, and there's no babies in the room. Right. There's nobody yelling or screaming or, pulling on your arm or any of those things. And that's just been crucial for us, or even in, ups and downs, right? And hard times too. It's like that's times where often, I find, hey, I can just share things with her and we can pray about it. And the Lord has just spoken through her, in ways, even through business that she's, not a business person, couldn't care less, but she supports me in every way, and the Lord has just spoken through her so many times where I'm like, okay, I got to cherish that time because like the Lord's going to show up.
Yes, sir.
So I love that you place such an importance on that. And even having a goal. Like it doesn't mean that you're going to hit it perfectly, right? And even know that up front, because you're probably not, or I can tell you're not. But man, having that, so you're both looking forward to it. What about, even after so many years of marriage, and I mean, we've been married almost 17, 18 years. And so I'm, I hate to even say so many years, like we're old, because we're not old. I keep telling my wife we're not old. But how do you keep pursuing her, right? After this many years of marriage, parenting, what are some maybe even small things that a man could do today, or maybe you've done recently that's meant a lot to Elizabeth?
Yeah, well, I would say I go in seasons of being great at this and seasons of being not great at this. And so I think what I mean is when you are working through life circumstances, and the backstory for us is we have 4 kids. My wife has a lot of chronic health conditions, and one of our little girls has special needs. And that creates all sorts of dynamics in our family that make it it's not like, it's not, my desire is to always be that version, but life in our life specifically has a lot of complexities to it that don't always allow for me to be able to be in that place mentally, emotionally, even spiritually, after a lot of caretaking, as an example, to always do those things, or to be as proactive, right? Like if everything's normal, then we're just excited that things aren't, when a fire isn't going off in our home, in our life with health specifically. So I would say that I go in and out of moments of strength with what you're saying. I think getting a PhD in your spouse is a very important job. I think if you're an educator or you like education, I think you always have to learn your spouse. And I think that means that what she needs changes and what she wants changes, and what she's going to potentially enjoy and not enjoy very much changes. And I mean, I'll never forget the moment when I realized the best gift I could give my wife was time away from me. I was like, oh, giving you solitude without anybody, including myself, is actually one of the best gifts for your soul in this stage of life. Now that felt very personal. And by the way, yes, it hurt. It sucked. I was like, oh, you don't even want like me to hang with you. And it wasn't and that was just my selfishness making it all about me. What it was is that she needed something that I didn't necessarily have. I wasn't as in tune with in myself. And so I think it was one of those moments personally where I just said, okay, what is this about? Like, this is about her health. I need to give her what she needs. So making that's one example of like maybe a bigger thing. I think on the daily, it's learning what are the things that are helpful to her. And I honestly, that's going to be so different for each man. So that's why I would say, I think the best thing you can do is study your wife. I bet you she's told you what she doesn't like. And I bet you she's told you what she does from you and from her expectation. Now, in overwhelm and stress and raising kids, maybe she's done that really well and very thoughtfully and respectfully and kindly. And maybe it's come out a little different than that. And it hasn't been always so gracious. I think you can take those moments and say, okay, like she's asking something of me and needing something of me that's different. So I wouldn't always, I think one of the things that I try to do is learn what she needs and then do my best in the season that I'm in with the Spirit's help to then fulfill that. And that could be anything from like right now, I'll just tell you honestly, the dumbest thing that she loves the most. I say it's dumb. She says it's amazing. I think it's dumb as all get out. But basically she loves when I make the bed. So I make the bed every day without fault. Every day. And I still don't understand why she can't make the bed. I still don't get that, but she feels really loved when I do. And so it's one way every time I look at that bed and it's messy, I think it's going to take me 2 minutes and it's going to mean something to her. So it can be that small. I think most women, especially moms, their love language is help. Like, just please help with anything. So I think anytime you're thoughtful and you're doing something for her that she's not then going to have to do, or she knows like if you do it, she's not going to have to do it. I know that doesn't sound romantic or sweet, but I think that it really actually moves the needle in your relationship in a deep way.
That's so good. And you said it's this dumb thing to you, but it doesn't even matter what you think about it, does it?
Yeah. It's so true. That's so true. It doesn't matter what I think about it. And I still want to say that I think it's dumb. Yeah.
What would you say, just think about the man who just feels like, because we've used this terminology at times and, but you're just stuck in roommate mode. How would you encourage, him? Yeah,
man. Well, first, I think that's really hard. It's hard because there's probably very real reasons of why you're there. And honestly, let me be fully honest. We can drift into that mode just as quickly as any other couple. I think the first thing is to believe the truth that just because you're in that space of roommate mode does not mean you will always be in that space. So I think first, do not believe the lie that you're in this space and now that's it. I think that's the biggest lie. And I think that there's moments and seasons where you have to be gracious with the family you actually have. And remember that there's going to be times when you feel and are more connected and times when you do not feel and are not very connected for very real reasons. Some of your control, but a lot of the times not. So I think having the long view in your relationship and in your marriage is super important because there's seasons that are just like, we are not as connected as we once were. And I think a lot of people make a lot of bad decisions in that moment to maybe even, and I don't even think this is ever really spoken. I think what ends up happening a lot of the times from my own experience personally and then people I talk to is there's a couple things that they've kind of just then reserved to or resigned to. She's never going to actually love me in the way that I love her, or he's never going to look at me the way he once did, and he's never going to speak to me the way that I want him to, and he's never and always and forever. And I think the moment you do that, you start to sow in deep, deep problems in your relationship. You're not believing in the person's goodwill. You're not believing in the power of the Spirit, which is not your power, but the power of the Holy Spirit to change who that person could be and is. And you are literally just basically resigning to a bad marriage, in my personal opinion. So if you found yourself in that space, I would say start with prayer. Ask God to first, before you ever dare ask for God to change her heart, ask him to change yours towards her. Then begin to pray for her heart. And then as the Spirit leads you and softens your heart towards that situation, I think it's about pursuing as well. Like you got to go, okay, well, how do I pursue my wife in a way that she feels loved? Not how you experience it, but how does she feel loved? And I think you start with little daily acts. I think life is a lot less, about those grandiose moments. It's a lot more power in those everyday small things. And so just like your spirituality, just like exercise, just like eating, it's a little bit every day. So I think the more you kind of pour into each other a little bit every day, you'll begin to see some movement. And I also, just the last thing I'll say on it is, I do think that you should be aware that you could start making little efforts and changes, and you might not see the needle move for months at a time. She might not respond. She might not change. And I would just say, don't lose hope in those spaces, because if her heart's, if she's following Jesus, you're following Jesus, I think it's only a matter of time until she can see your heart warming and her heart warming. And I would just say it's hard. It's hard, and it's easy for couples to move in and out of that. And don't be alarmed if you're in it, but I'd say be active to get out of it.
Love that. That is so good. So important. I love your first response being go to prayer and praying about your own heart. That's so good. How do I need to change, right? Instead of just pointing the finger. So often that is the case. How would you just even speak? How would you connect, say, just God's grace over that situation as well, and I just think about, a lot of times, obviously there's hurt and all these things that everybody's situation is so different, but I just think about just the Lord's grace over our lives and marriages, and maybe how, is there a way maybe you've even seen that?
Well, I think that, there's a lot of things I think. I think it's really important to remember we serve a God who can undo what's been done. He can restore the years the locusts have eaten. He can redo something that's been done that was really bad. And I think that's a level of faith that many Christians that I know never get to, but we all want to be there. And that's that place of believing God can do things that seem impossible, but for him are just very normal, par for the course. And so I think, man, my marriage has been the most beautiful, shaping, challenging tool in my entire life, as well as fatherhood, to be completely honest. And I am actively praying for God to undo some of the damage that I've done in my immaturity, my unawareness, my lack of godliness, my immaturity, my own generational brokenness that I didn't fully understand. I'm actively praying for God to undo what's been done. So I think God's grace in so many ways plays out in all these ways we can't even see. I have hope that there's a time in my life where my marriage is a lot stronger than it is even today, and my relationship with my kids is even better than it is today. But I also have to sit in the space when it's not great, and it's not, and it is really hard. And I think grace, there's a lot of different definitions. One of my favorite is basically, God's energy to do the thing that's right in front of you. Like God gives you grace. Yes, there's forgiveness and grace, but there's also power. It's like, I think Richard Foster uses the example. It's like, a jet engine, like a 747 taking off, like a Christian uses grace, like a 747 uses, jet line fuel on takeoff. It's just, we need it every day. We need loads of it. And I don't even think we realize how much of it is in us actively. And I think we every single day need to ask for God's grace to be the kinds of fathers, husbands, men that we need to be. If you're trying to do this on your own and you're trying to, as the different, have you heard about this idea of people raw dogging flights where they just like stare at a screen for 5 hours and don't watch anything? Have you heard of this? They call it raw dogging flight. Yeah, it doesn't sound great, but what they're referring to is not sexual in any way. It's just simply, they literally go on a flight. They don't listen to anything. They don't watch anything. It's called raw dogging a flight. I mean, so many of us go to fatherhood. Yeah. No need to Google. I just told you. I think the point is, though, many of us go into fatherhood with that kind of idea. Like, I just got to do this all on my own. This is up to me. This is grit, right? And the Spirit's often just saying, it doesn't have to be as hard as you're making it. Like, ask for my help. Ask for my grace. So I think ask for that grace. And I think God wants to show up every day and help undo the things that have been done, whether, the hard stuff especially.
Brook, incredible. I've been so challenged personally. I know the men listening have as well, just learning from you and man, the things you've learned, pointing us back to the Lord, spending time with him, prayer early, prayer late, sometimes as well after the kids are asleep, like you said. Then even just asking the Lord to change us before we're asking him to change somebody else. Brook, how can the listeners learn more about you, learn about your book, your podcast? I know you're doing some amazing content as well. How can they learn more about you?
Oh, thank you. You can go over to intentionalparents.org. All of our stuff's there. Recently just launched a whole fatherhood initiative called Intentional Fatherhood. That has its own website, intentionalfatherhood.org. Myself and Justin Whitmell Early, author of Habits of the Household and a bunch of other good books, partnered together to start helping fathers. And man, the response has been bonkers. We're so excited about that. But yeah, you can check us out there. Social media at Intentional Parents, at Intentional Fatherhood. Check out all that stuff. And then, I just recently, we specifically are right now releasing it to all of our donors, but just wrote a prayer devotional for your kids called Sowing a Hidden Seed, Daily Prayers for Your Child's Spiritual Growth. And the idea is this is like, I wanted to create something that was super tangible for the person that's like, I only have like a minute or two, that idea, like Jesus's rhythms, they weren't they weren't rigid, but they were rooted. Like, it's just a minute. It's a quote from someone who's far gone and so smart. It's a scripture to read over, and then it's a prayer written out from that topic to pray over your life and your kids. And so literally, if you go through the whole thing, it's maybe 2 minutes. And the idea, each day is a different topic. So one day's on like shame or anxiety or your kid's future marriage or sexual integrity in your life and in theirs. And it's literally just taking it and praying over these things that honestly, that if we just forget. I do all the time. Like, I even go back to the book to go like, oh yeah, what haven't I prayed for my kids? Right. So those are some different resources that will be available soon on our website, but those are places you can check us out. And that's what we're doing.
Love the focus of the new book. I love that it's even just something somebody can feel that's doable every day.
Yes.
When it's just chaotic as well, right? Just bring us back and remind us. So thank you again so much. Honored.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. Bless you. And thank you for doing the work you're doing.
Awesome.